Humans send a signal with human DNA into space and receive a response from aliens who intend to crossbreed their DNA and humans, with dire consequences. It all starts in a US government laboratory. The girl wakes up in a room isolated by a glass dome, where on the orders of the head of the laboratory Fitch, 2 cylinders of cyanide gas are brought into the room and connected to a capsule. Fitch tearfully apologizes to the girl and gives the order to let the gas in. She cries, but after a moment she is hidden by a poisonous mist. The scientists bow their heads, but suddenly the glass shatters from the impact and a completely unharmed girl jumps out. She quickly finds a way out and escapes from the lab. A chase begins, but the girl easily gets over the barbed wire and escapes. She is frightened and does not know what to do. She is attacked by a vile vagrant, but she suddenly, with inhuman force, throws the man to the wall and he dies. The scientists search all around, but the girl has disappeared. Fitch remembers that there is a railroad station nearby, so it makes sense to look for her there. And the girl is indeed riding in an empty freight car, but soon gets off at a small railroad station, where she watches a man paying for groceries in a store. She wants to steal the food, but the salesman scares her with his question. Grabbing someone else's bag, the fugitive boards the train. She finds a portable television in her bag and watches recordings of various programs with a smile. But soon she feels hungry and goes in search of food. She cleverly steals money from the cash register and, sneaking into the kitchen, puts in her bag everything that she thinks may come in handy. Back at her seat, the girl starts eating a banana with the peel on when the conductor knocks on the door. The woman inquires as to her age and then sells her ticket for half price. Meanwhile, a team of experts led by Fitch finds the corpse of a hobo. The scientist is sure that it was she who did it, as he knows her abilities. Meanwhile, the girl has nightmares again. She wakes up in fright and eats her stress with sweets. But immediately she feels something trying to get out of her, and the next moment many tentacles cover the wall. At that moment, a group gathers in the lab, including combat specialist Preston Lennox, psychic Dan Smithson, molecular biology expert Laura Baker, and police psychologist Stephen Arden. Dan shows off his abilities by telling Preston how he feels. On a train, the conductor enters the girl's compartment, and seeing that she is not in her seat, passes the restroom where she finds a hideous-looking cocoon. The woman gets closer when tentacles burrow into her and kill her on the spot, and an adult girl emerges from the cocoon. Meanwhile, Fitch brings the group up to speed. In 1974, a message was sent into outer space containing the structure of human DNA, a map of the solar system, and information about the Earth's population. In 1993, the laboratory received a return message from extraterrestrial intelligence, which included information about a new way of extracting energy, leading scientists to believe in the good intentions of the aliens. Next came a new message with a new DNA sequence with instructions on how to combine it with human DNA. The scientists began experiments, resulting in 3 viable embryos. 2 were frozen, and the third produced a girl they named Syl. The hybrid grew at a rapid rate and after a month looked like a 5-year-old child. Dan, looking at the video, reports that the girl didn't like being locked up alone. And then Syl's sleeping eyes start moving in the video. The psychic realizes she's having nightmares. The research team didn't like it either and decided to end the experiment. But nothing came of it. Fitch is sure that it was Syl who killed the drifter, and Dan predicts that there will be other victims. So the task of the group is to find and destroy the monster. In the meantime, Syl arrives in Los Angeles and, wearing a conductor's costume, goes outside. The group arrives there and, having examined the train, finds the corpse of the conductor and the cocoon. But Syl is no longer there, and apparently she has turned into an adult girl, and the conductor's credit card is missing. Syl sees a wedding dress in the window. Without thinking twice, she buys one and goes out in her new look. The group, meanwhile, settles into the hotel, and Laura offers to examine the embryos to see what the aliens are afraid of. Meanwhile, Syl wanders the streets and pays special attention to pregnant women and small children. The girl checks into a motel, and after finding an adult channel, realizes that she needs a man to reproduce. During this time, the scientists try to repeat the experiment, and in the process, the video surveillance breaks down. Laura and Preston head into the room to replace the failed equipment. They are fiddling with a box with an alien creature locked inside, when the psychic senses that something is going wrong. Immediately, the humans see some kind of bubbly neoplasm begin to multiply inside. Preston rushes in and drops the bolt that secures the lid of the incubator. The monster grows, but Fitch can't let the scientists out until they fix the capsule. Eventually, the creature makes its way out. Fitch announces that he will be forced to burn down the entire room. Laura disconnects the gas pipe and uses it as a flamethrower. The monster seems to be destroyed, but the humans are wrong, and the cocoon continues to grow. Preston chops its tentacles while the people around him try to get Fitch to open the door. Seemingly done with the monster, Stephen pushes Fitch away and opens the door himself. Laura and Preston rush out, and the rest of the monster burns in the fire. Meanwhile, Sil heads to the front desk where the desk clerk asks her to pay for the room and advises her to look for men at the club around the corner. The girl pays with the conductor's card and she manages to be located, and the group drives to the motel. As the girl arrives at the nightclub, she is almost introduced to an attractive man who is suddenly hit on by another girl. Sil doesn't like it. She follows the girl into the restroom and kills her there, after which she continues her acquaintance with the guy and leaves with him, with her very closely following his manipulations with the car. At this time, the group arrives at the club, where they find the girl's corpse and find out who the girl similar to Sil left with. At the guy's house, she suddenly feels that this male is not right for her. But when she asks to be taken back, the man tries to leave her forcibly, and the girl kills him, and the group arriving finds only a dead body. Laura expresses her belief that the species is looking for a suitable mate to mate and procreate, and the man turns out to be a diabetic. The group returns to Sil's hotel and follows her blood found in the restroom. The girl at this time is riding in the boyfriend's car around town, but soon the car runs out of gas and she gets out of it but stares at a skateboarder and is hit by a car. Meanwhile, the group captures Sil's image from the hotel's security cameras and realizes that she is fully grown and ready to reproduce. If she succeeds and gives birth to a boy, the world will be overrun with monsters in 6 months. At this time, the unconscious Sil is taken to the hospital by a passing man. But to the surprise of the medics, the injured girl quickly regains consciousness, recovers, and leaves. Downstairs, she meets the guy who helped her and leaves with him. He brings her home where she marvels at the pool and he takes a picture with her. Meanwhile, the group arrives at the hospital, where the card of the guy who paid for the treatment is used to figure out his address. Meanwhile, Sil starts acting so persistent that it scares the guy. He tries to escape, but then the sounds of Preston's footsteps come from outside. The owner tries to get out of the pool, but the girl takes the form of a mutant, kills the man, and escapes before the team enters the house. She gets into the car of a passing woman begging for help. The team surveys the victim's house. No photo was taken, and by all accounts no intimacy happened here either. The team discusses their actions without noticing that Sil, who drove up in a car, is lip-reading. The men head to the hotel to get some rest. Laura suggests that Sil is a biological weapon, mopping up the site of a suspected alien expansion. At the hotel, the group splits up. Preston goes up to the room without noticing Sil, and she realizes that this male is the right one for her, but in the meantime returns to the house of the woman she captured. The woman begs to be released, but Force admits she doesn't know who she is or why she is on Earth. In front of the woman, she cuts off her finger, which immediately recovers and makes her a woman too. But she throws her finger in the garbage and then sits in the car and drives away from the house, preparing the trick. Meanwhile, the group waits for her at the club to no avail. Dan suddenly senses her presence and confronts the girl on the doorstep. At Dan's screams, the others come running after her. Fitch calls for helicopters, and the group rushes off in pursuit of Sil's car, in which the bound woman is also sitting. Breaking away from the chase, Sil steers the car into the enemy and jumps out of it. The car crashes and explodes. To make sure the individual is dead, a helicopter opens fire and burns out instead of crashing, while Sil escapes in another vehicle. The police rush to the scene of the accident, but the group doesn't believe the individual is dead. It all came out too easily. They find a severed finger in the car door, which Fitch sends for tests and congratulates the humans on their victory. While Sil changes his appearance and changes his hair color, the company heads to the hotel and down to the restaurant to celebrate the end of the case. Laura and Preston sympathize with each other. The woman invites him to a dance, which he cuts short when he sees a blonde girl nearby who looks like Sil. Laura is offended because the analysis showed that the finger belonged to Sil, and goes to the bathroom where she paints her lips, not realizing that Sil is next to her and even gives her his perfume. Later, the woman announces that she is going to bed and goes up to her room. Preston follows her when Sil enters the elevator with him, but he doesn't recognize her either, though he notes the smell of perfume. Knocks Laura's room, leaving a do not disturb sign on the door, unaware that Sil is standing outside, and listens to the sounds from the room. That's when she notices a maid bringing out fresh linens. Doing the same, the girl sneaks into the neighboring room and listens to the sounds of lovemaking from behind the wall. It turns out that this is the room of a psychologist, and he returns to find the girl who supposedly saw him in the restaurant and wants to get to know him better. The one is totally cool with it, and Sil finally gets a partner. Dan, meanwhile, is watching TV where there is a commercial for hair dye. He feels uneasy and realizes that Syl is somewhere nearby. The psychic goes to Laura and Preston's room because he is sure Syl is in the next room. Preston believes Dan and calls Fitch, and a joyful Syl informs Stephen that conception has begun. He laughs at her words, but in the next moment realizes who is really next door. The group breaks into the room, but find only the psychologist's body and rush in pursuit. They make their way down to the garage and see the door broken through. Preston distributes flamethrowers and the team makes their way into the sewer tunnels. When the men lose track of Syl, they split off in different directions because Fitch doesn't trust Dan's senses and soon notices that there is someone underwater, but he fails to dodge the swift attack and dies. The rest of the team continues the hunt. Dan spots a breach in the wall and Preston sets out to explore it, occasionally burning out anything that turns out to be dangerous. While nearby, Syl gives birth to a baby. Dan senses this and goes in the right direction where the newborn baby eats rats. The psychic finds the baby, but it turns into a monster and attacks Dan, who shoots it with a flamethrower. The burning monster falls down where some flammable liquid has been spilled and ignites it. Dan finds himself in a difficult position, dangling above the blazing abyss. Laura calls for help, and Preston runs to her voice. When the mutant force appears, it grabs Preston with its tentacles, but he opens fire and drops it into the flames. Falling, the monster grabs onto Dan, but Preston shoots at her and finally blows the monster to smithereens. The trio, confident of finishing the job, go outside, not noticing the rat dragging away a stump of a tentacle, and then attacking another rat. That's the end of the movie. Let me know what you think of it in the comments.